Well, here with us now is special guest Alveda King, Director of Civil Rights for the Unborn for Priests for Life. Dr. King, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for this opportunity. Hello, everyone.
Well, Congressman John Lewis was a friend and ally of your uncle, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As of last Friday, he was the last living speaker at the March on Washington, dying on the same day as the Reverend C.T. Vivian. How do you remember the life and legacy of John Lewis?
I met John Lewis in the 1960s. I was a youth organizer, and of course, he was already known as the peaceful warrior of the civil rights movement. My father, Reverend Alfred Daniel Williams King, was there on that bridge, on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, when John was beaten, my dad was beaten, Hosea Williams and others. And so I know that he has been very consistent throughout his lifetime until he died with being forgiving, peaceful, and caring about the people. He was a servant leader, and that is the way I remember Congressman John Lewis.
Alveda, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, named after a KKK leader who supported slavery, it's where John Lewis was brutally beaten marching for the right to vote along with your father and others. What do you think of the idea of renaming the bridge in honor of John Lewis, as some are suggesting?
I believe it would be very appropriate if the bridge is renamed, of course, to Freedom Walkway or Freedom Pathway, with very distinguished notation to Congressman Lewis and others. Things happen and occur in groups rather than one leader and one individual being the only one that should be recognized. I know in the Bible pattern, for example, you had Moses and Abraham and etc. But in the New Testament, you had Christ and the disciples, the 12, at the Pentecost, the 120. And so I believe it's appropriate, more like the thing President Trump says, a garden, a historical garden with these historical figures there, perhaps even in their natural habitat of serving or building or doing. So if the bridge is renamed, I would love to see it named something that would not only remember Congressman Lewis, and I mean a champion there, but to remember others as well.
You know, more and more Americans now see racism as a major issue that needs to be addressed. The fight for equality and justice predates John Lewis, your father and uncle, and so many others who made peaceful stands. Dr. King, is it possible to overcome the racial wounds without a move by the power of God?
It is very possible once we acknowledge God, and with God, all things are possible. Martin Luther King Jr. said the day should come when we don't have black power or white power, only God power and human power, with the humans subjected to God Almighty. And once we subject ourselves to God, all things are possible. So I do definitely believe it is possible. We have to acknowledge that we are one race, the human race.
Powerful words. You know, I listened this morning on my way into work to a historian talk about John Lewis and how he adopted the theology of redemptive suffering, getting into what he called good trouble by practicing nonviolence. How did John Lewis influence you as a peaceful warrior?
John Lewis was part of a movement. We understood that unearned suffering is redemptive. That's something Martin Luther King Jr. said. However, as Christians, we're following the doctrine and the gospel of Jesus Christ, not a social gospel. And we deal with not even social justice, but the justice and mercy of God, the judgment of God being tempered by mercy, the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so if we follow the example of Christ, that would include the nonviolent principles that John Lewis followed and carried out throughout his lifetime. He and I had different platforms. I, as I say, am more like a Christian evangelist, the gospel of Jesus Christ, and John fighting for social justice and the social gospel kind of thing. However, I admire him as a peaceful warrior. That's the man that I know or knew. Of course, he's gone now. And I deep control of his family as well.
Dr. Alveda King, thanks for making time for us today and sharing your reflections of John Lewis.
Thank you.